Okay, Unit 3 test review. So the first 10, we're just finding slope. It says find the slope of each equation for the following problems. So if we start at 1, we see it's y equals 4. There is absolutely no x. So this is a Hoy equation. Horizontal, 0 slope, y equals equation. So we know our slope is 0. Also, there's 0 x's. That's how we know your slope is 0. Okay, here we have standard form. So just a reminder, slope from standard form. Standard form slope is opposite of A over exact B. It's also negative A over B. Same thing, just this makes more sense to some of y'all. So opposite of A over exact B. So knowing that this is A, B, C. So opposite of A, well, opposite of positive 2 is negative 2 over exact B is negative 4. And 2 negatives makes a positive. And it also simplifies. 2 over 4 simplifies to 1 over 2. Always, always, always simplify your slope if possible. So this is your slope. Okay, so again, standard form, A, B, C. So again, opposite of positive 5 is negative 5 over exact B is 3. That does not simplify, and there's no double negative, so that is your answer. Okay, on number 4, this is an x equals equation. There's absolutely no y. So this is a VUX. It's vertical undefined x equals equation. So my slope is undefined. Now a reminder on how to find slope from 2 points. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is from 2 points. Okay, so knowing that, I'm going to label my points. So I have x1, y1, x2, y2. So I know slope is y2, which is 4, minus y1, which is 3, over 2 minus x1, which is negative 1. Okay, so you can do it by hand. You can also do it by calculator. A calculator will simplify it for you. Alpha y equals enter, 4 minus 3 over 2 minus negative 1. And that gives me 1/3, positive 1/3. Now, if you would have done it by hand, you would have gotten 4 minus 3, which is positive 1. And then 2 negatives makes a plus. It's a broken plus sign, so this would have been plus, and 2 plus 1 is 3. So you would have gotten the exact same thing had you done it correctly. So let's do another one with 2 points. So x1, y1, x2, y2. So slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So again, I'm going to type in my calculator. So then I don't have to worry about simplifying. I don't have to worry about negatives or anything. It's going to do it all for me. And I get just negative 3. So my slope is negative 3. Okay, so now finding slope from graphs. Just a reminder is rise over run. And remember, up is positive, down is negative for your top number. That's your up and down. While your side to side is your run, left is negative, right is positive. And you have to find 2 pretty points. One thing I noticed on one of y'all's practices, the slope practice, or even maybe it was one of the more recent ones where y'all had to find the equations of the graphs, is that y'all weren't finding pretty points. Y'all were just picking a random spot on the line that you thought was close. You actually have to find a perfect point that's exactly on the crosshairs. So like here we have a 0, 0 point, and then if you notice there's a point right here, there's a point right here, and sometimes if you find more than one, if it looks about the same distance, then you know it's correct. So I'm going to rise 1, 2. Rise 2 is positive. I'm going to go right 1, which is also positive, so then it's rise over run, and my slope is 2 over 1, which is just 2. Now if you wrote 2 over 1, that's also correct, and I would not count that wrong. Now 8 is a special case. This is a horizontal line, so again it's hoi, where your slope is 0. So 8, here's a pretty point, this looks like a pretty point, and this also looks like a pretty point, and if you notice they're about the same distance, so that's correct. So I'm going to go down 1, which is negative 1, and I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3, 4, which is positive, so my slope is negative 1 over 4. Which does not simplify. And this is a negative slope. It's going downward from left to right, so my answer should be negative. Okay, and number 10 is also a special case. It is a vertical line, which means it's VUX, vertical undefined x equals equation, so it's an undefined slope. Okay, so let's look at the next part. It says complete the information for each given equation, then draw the graph by plotting the points. So this one wants to know my x-intercept and my y-intercept. So one thing to remember is that your x-intercept is where y equals 0, and your y-intercept is where x equals 0. I know there's not a ton of space, but you can squeeze it in somewhere. Okay, so on this one, when x is 0, or y is 0, sorry, finding my x-intercept, I'm just going to rewrite it. 9 equals negative 3x plus 4, and instead of y, I'm going to put 0. Well, 0 times anything is 0, so this 4 times 0 just becomes a plus 0, which we don't need. So I'm going to divide both sides by solving for, or by negative 3 to solve for x, and I get x equals negative 3. So I know my x-intercept is negative 3, and on my x-axis, this is my x-axis, I'm going to put a point at negative 3. 1, 2, 3. So therefore, this is my y-axis. And now I'm going to find where my y-axis, my y-intercept, where it touches my y-axis. So this is where x is 0. So I'm going to do 9 equals negative 3 times 0 plus 4y. Well, negative 3 times 0 is 0. And when I divide both sides by 4, is it going to give me a pretty point? No. So this becomes 9 over 4, which I cannot plot because it is not a pretty point. So the last thing we can find, because it's in standard form, I know C is first, but do we need C for slope? No. This is your A because it has the x. This is your B because it has the y. So slope M equals opposite of A, so the opposite of negative 3 is positive 3, over B, exact B, which is 4. So I know my slope is 3 over 4. So I'm going to rise 3, run 4, because they're both positive. I'm going up and right. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can go down 3, backwards 4. So there's my line. Now the best part about number 12 is it's in y equals. Y'all, what can we do with a y equals equation? Type it in our calculator. So I can come here and I can do 2x minus 3. That's the exact equation, y equals 2x minus 3. And I can go to my table and fill in these empty spots. So I'm looking for y is negative 3. Look, I'm already there. X is 0. So at 0, negative 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, well that's also my y-intercept, which I just put on my y-axis, so that's how we learned how to plot those points. And what's my slope here? Slope is 2, so I know I would rise 2, run 1. But I can also finish finding these points. So x is 2, y is 1, and when y is 5, x is 4. So I can go to 2 up 1, and I can go 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I can check my slope. If I rise 2, run 1, rise 2, run 1, it brought me back. Rise 2, run 1, freeze. Staring at these dots starts to make me feel crazy. So there's about 5 points, so let's draw our line. Any questions with that? Okay, so let's look at 13. You'll notice this is an inequality. Okay, meaning I actually have to find my intercepts to graph it. Okay, so I'm gonna find my x-intercept, which is where y equals 0. So 5x plus 2 times 0. And remember, you can use an equal sign when you're solving for your intercept because you're looking for on the line, which is where it's equal. 2 times 0 is 0, so I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And I get x equals 2. So on my x-axis, I'm going to put a point at positive 2. Now, I don't have to find my y-intercept. You can, but you don't have to. Okay, I'm going to find my slope. So opposite of a over b, well, opposite of 5 is negative 5 over exact b is 2. Well, negative 5 tells me to go down, and positive 2 tells me to go right. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right 2. And then remember, with inequalities, because this is an inequality, not an equal sign, I'm going to go all the way across my graph. So I could also do opposite, opposite, and go up 5, left 2, which will still give me a negative slope. So up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, left 2. Now, is this going to be a solid line or a dashed line? We're going to look at our inequality. It has a line underneath, meaning it's a solid line. So I'm going to draw a solid line, not a dashed line. And remember, with inequalities, when they're in standard form, you can't just shade above or below because of your sign. You actually have to test a point. So we talked about how 0, 0 is their easiest point to test. And we're going to plug it in and see if it's true or false. So if I plug in 5, so this is my test point. So if I plug in 5 times x is 0, plus 2 times y is 0, is less than or equal to 10. Well, what's anything times 0? And 0 plus 0 is 0. Is 0 less than or equal to 10? Yeah, so this is a true point. So if this side's true, what's this side? False. And what side do we always shade? The true side. So we're going to shade this side. Also, your shading does not have to be perfect. If it's just a squiggle, I will accept. Any questions with that one? Okay, so let's look at number 14. So again, this one is in standard form. Okay, So we are going to find an intercept. X-intercept is where y equals 0. So I'm going to plug into x plus, well, y is 0 is greater than -4. Well, that goes away. So I would divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals -2. So -2 for my x-intercept. Now I want you to remember this is the same thing as saying 1y, positive 1y. So when I find my slope, it's opposite of a. What's the opposite of 2 is -2 over exact b, which is 1. Well, -2 tells me to go down, and positive 1 tells me to go right. So I'm going to go down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1. I'm going to go up 2, because remember you can do opposite, opposite. I can also go up to left 1. Now what kind of line am I drawing? Dashed, because it's not equal to. And then again, we have to test a point. So again, 0, 0 is not on my line, so I'm going to test 0, 0. And I get 2 times 0 plus 0 is greater than -4. Well, that gives me 0 is greater than -4. Is that true or false? Would you rather have $0 or -$4?
0.
Because it's greater, so this is true. So therefore, this side is false, and we're going to shade above. Okay, flip. Okay, the back is all of the equations where you have to write them depending on what information is given to you. So this first one says horizontal line. Well, horizontal is hoi. So I know it's going to be a y equals equation, and it says standard form, but there's no other way to write these, so this will be standard form. So through this point, well, what is the y of this point? It's -1, so your equation is just y equals -1. Okay, so the next one says vertical line, which tells me VUX, vertical undefined x equals equation. So through this point in slope-intercept form, so again, it doesn't matter, when it's a special case, it doesn't matter what form it tells you. So this tells me vertical undefined x equals equation, so I know it's going to be x equals something. Well, what's the x of my point? It's -2. Okay, so number 17 says, goes through -4, -2, and it's parallel to this, and it wants us to write it in standard form. So I know I'm going to find A, B, and C to write it in standard form. Now this is just the line it's parallel to. This line gives me absolutely no information for my new line. The only thing it gives me is the slope. Parallel means same slope. So I know I need the exact same slope. Well, opposite of A over B is -3 over 3, which is just -1 over 1, if you need to write it as a fraction. So the opposite of -1 is +1. Exact B is +1. So now I have 1x plus 1y equals C. And that's where the point it gave me comes into play. This is my x, this is my y, so instead of, it's going to be 1 times -4 plus 1 times -2 equals C. So we have 1 times -4 plus 1 times -2, and I get -6. So C is negative 6. Is A positive? Yes. So do I need to change anything? No. So my answer is 1x plus 1y equals negative 6. Now, would it be okay if you just wrote x plus y equals negative 6? Yes. You do not have to write the 1 in front of your x and y. So both of those would be accepted. Because remember, your slope, to find slope from standard form, you do the opposite. So to go backwards, you would also have to do the opposite. Like, see how it was a positive 3 and we put negative 3? So to go backwards, I would have to put a positive 3 back. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so let's look at 18. Because negative 3 over 3 equals negative 1. And then I just made it a fraction. Yeah? Okay. So let's look at the next one. It says perpendicular this time. Okay, perpendicular means opposite. Reciprocal. Reciprocal. Reciprocal just means you flip your fraction. Okay, opposite just means positive versus negative. So we have to find the old slope. So again, it's a standard form, so I'm going to write A equals B equals C equals. Okay, so I need to find my old slope of the equation given to me, so that way I can find the opposite reciprocal, right? So opposite of A over B, well, what's the opposite of positive 2? Over exact B. Negative 3, 2 negatives makes A positive, so it becomes positive 2 over 3. So my new slope is opposite. What's the opposite of positive? And then flip it, so 3 over 2. So I'm going to cross off my old slope because I don't want it to throw me off. Because I'm using the new slope, the opposite reciprocal slope. So what's the opposite of the top for my A? Negative 3, or positive 3, sorry. And exact B? 2. So I know 3x plus 2y equals C. And that's where my point given to me comes into play. So 3 times x is negative 4, plus 2 times y is 5, equals whatever that equals is my C. So 3 times negative 4, plus 2 times 5, and that gives me negative 2. So my standard form equation would be 3x plus 2y equals negative 2.
If A was negative,
you flip all of them.
Like just a sign.
Okay, let's look at 19. 19 says through 5, 6 and perpendicular to x equals 4 in slope-intercept form. Well, x equals 4 is what kind of equation? It's a Vux. What's perpendicular to a vertical line? A horizontal line. So we're looking for a HOI, meaning it's a y equals equation. Well, what does y equal? There's your answer. Doesn't matter what form it tells me, there's no other way to write that equation. Okay? $20 says through 8, 11, and parallel to x equals 5. Well, parallel means same slope. This is a Vux equation, so what's the slope? Undefined, right? And what's undefined? Well, if I have another undefined, wouldn't it also be a Vux equation? Because those are both undefined. Parallel means same slope. So x equals, well, what does x equal of my point? Any questions with those two? Okay, so keep going. So 21 says slope of negative 3 over 2 and passes through 1, 3 slope-intercept form. So again, y equals mx plus b. This one actually does matter. It's not a vertical or a horizontal line. So it gives me my slope, and it tells me to find it in slope-intercept form. Well, if I already know my slope, that's my m. I didn't have to solve for it. I'm going to plug in what I know. I know y equals negative 3 over 2x, but I don't know b, so I'm just going to put plus b because that's that part of the formula. Well, I know a point. This is my x, this is my y, so I'm going to plug it in and solve for b. So y is 3 equals negative 3 over 2 times 1 plus b. Well, what's negative 3 over 2 times 1? Yeah, it's just negative 3 over 2. And how do I get rid of a negative 3 over 2? I'm going to add 3 over 2 to both sides. And this is where your calculator is awesome. Alpha y equals enter 3 over 2 plus 3 gives me 9 over 2. So I know my y-intercept is 9 over 2. So I get y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 9 over 2. Now, when it's y equals, can you check it in your calculator? Yes, you can type this in your y equals. I know my slope is negative 3 over 2 because that's what I literally just typed for my slope. So now I just need to make sure it goes through the point 1, 3, and I have 1, 3. So it did. So we're good. Does that make sense? If the fractions scare you, check your work. Okay, this one says slope. Okay, my bad. 22 says point slope form. I can't read. Well, maybe I can, and I just ignored it. So that's my y2 like I just did that example. So if we were to have done point slope form, we didn't have to do all this. We would have gotten y minus, well, what's my y1? Negative 4 equals m, which is 1/4, x minus x1, which is also negative 4. These are both broken plus signs, so I get y plus 4 equals 1/4 x plus 4. So that is your correct answer for number 22. Last one, it says a slope of negative 2 and a y-intercept of 3. Well, I need to find slope in my y-intercept, so if it gives me everything I need, my slope is negative 2, my y-intercept is 3, y equals negative 2 plus 3. Oop, don't forget your x. Now, one thing I do want to remind you before I finish, because there may or may not be one point where it says to put it in point slope form, and I don't have this on here. So if I told you to put number 21 in point slope form, remember, these are easy because all you need is a point and a slope. This gave me the slope, it also gave me a point, so does it matter? So remember, point slope is y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. So this is my m, this is my x1, y1. So y minus 3 equals my slope, x minus x1, which is 1, that would be my answer. Don't overthink it.